welcome to AI Revolution Digest, where businesses get smarter. I'm Jocelyn, and I'm going to show you how AI drives real results. And because the future is awaiting, let's dive right in. With AI on the rise, people are often wondering, hey, what is the future of work? But one of the things and the skill set we need is continuous learning. So, how do you sell the future of learning in the first place? To answer this question, yes, welcome our very special guest for today, Miss Sima Saadat. Sir, ma'am, thank you for being here. Can you tell our listeners who are you and what is it that you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Sima, and right now I am the country manager and director of international marketing for General Assembly. So I manage the Singapore campus, but I also look after all of our global non-North America markets across the world.
Thank you for being here. So I'm pretty sure you heard on how I introduced you as sir. That was my blimp. Because most of my guests are men, so it's really happy to see a woman right now. So
Great. I'm happy to be a woman on the show.
thank you for being here. So when you go to LinkedIn, a lot of people are saying, hey, marketing, they often believe it's just advertisement, right? When you think of marketing, you just think of ads. And if AI is there, we're able to do text to videos, or you can go to ChatGPT and it's gonna create a copywriting for you instantly. So now with marketing, in what ways did AI redefine it, and what does it mean to you today for your role?
Yeah, I think there's so much, like you said, there's so much that AI can support with around marketing. I think the day-to-day stuff, like you mentioned, copywriting, they can put together emails, they can put together like baseline strategies and ideas, brainstorm. It's just somebody else, quote unquote, somebody else that you can kind of have different ideas with. So there's tons that I think AI can do, and it's going to absolutely help. And that's just the easy stuff. Like when we look at being able to do from a visualization support in creating posts and stuff, that's going to be huge. And then the data aspect is there, of course, and being able to create these hyper automations. We've had that for a long time, but being able to go even above and beyond and make it more accessible to the everyday person, it's going to open up a lot of doors, which I think is very exciting.
Yes, thank you. So the important thing that I've gotten from your answer is marketing is not just advertisement, right? It's a part of marketing, but what you're actually saying is it's a process. That yes, you have this data, but it's about finding what's the right data to use to hyper personalize an ad. And you said in your introduction that you're the head of the Asian Pacific, or is it like the whole world?
Global for non-North America markets. Yep.
Okay, the whole world basically. So you work in different cultures and you market to different cultures, and what we know is different countries have different needs. So my question is, how do you adapt to different cultural contexts? Like how do you analyze data from that, and how do you from that how do you change your storytelling?
Yeah, that's great. So I think for us, the key is that, especially for any brand, your core message has to stay the same, right? So that's really important. Let's take our new like AI Academy, for example. Across the board, AI is changing the world. Doesn't matter where you live, and you have to upskill. That's the best way to stay relevant, right? But as you mentioned, like it's going to be different in different regions, the way we message it, and also more of like the amount of context we give. So there is a little bit of a market education that sometimes we have to do depending on the different markets and the way that we showcase things because in some places, everyone might be really excited about AI. And then in some places, there's a lot more anxiety or fear. Oh, is it going to take over my job? What does this mean for data? That sort of stuff. So we will like really push the messaging in those areas around like AI isn't a threat, but being unprepared is a threat. Right. And so that starts giving us, it's not so much about changing the overall messaging or the core value that we're providing, the brand stays the same, but the idea is that we're giving a lot more context and kind of rewriting the narrative.
My question is, it's easier to Well, I can imagine it's going to be easy to enter a market that's already open to AI. So they're like, hey, we have a new AI course. They'll be very excited. They'll ask you questions. But you also mentioned that some markets are more cautious about AI or their anxiety and something like that. So how do you balance between, hey, this is, if you're not going to learn right now, you're going to get out of your job, but in a way that's encouraging them and it's not just fear mongering, because there's a lot of talk on how a AI is fear mongering a lot in social media. So people might say, hey, you're just scaring me just to buy your product. But you're not just doing that to scare them, you're actually telling them a fact. So how do you like balance that storytelling? Can you also give us
Yeah.
the
So
background with that?
I think a big part again, like coming back to that word empowerment, right? And just like even from what you were saying at the beginning around marketing not just being about advertising, it's really about like connecting with your audience, right? And that's at an emotional level. And that's something that I think that is really important. That it's sometimes missed and will be missed by AI for sure, right? So that's where like the human element comes in, and it's so important. And so in these things, like there is a fine line between that like fear and also encouragement, right? And so I think that's where we have to draw that line. In some regions, we're seeing like I think the stat is that like 40 governments have already started initiatives that have helped and like are encouraging their citizens to do AI education and reskilling initiatives. So in that case, sometimes that helps, right? Because we can tack on to conversations like that. We're looking more at marketing channels like press and media at that point, right? Some places, press and media is not trusted the way that it is in other regions. So then we're looking at more, sometimes, more of the Western culture, there's that like individual heroistic support. So we're looking at more testimonials and inspirational, like single person has grown and like done this in their career, right? So two different aspects, but again, still the same core message and value, which is that AI is most important to be upskilling and reskilling yourself to stay relevant. And yeah, I think the verbiage and the tone that you use is really important.
You said something interesting where in Western culture, since they're more individualistic, your marketing style is, hey, you're the hero. That with this, you're gonna get all these promotions. And when you're gonna operate in, let's say, in the Asian context, we're more of a collectivist country. So how do you change your messaging around that? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I mean, again, it's more around like oh, we're all going to change, like society is going to change, right? So it's quite small tweaks in the way you change your messaging. It's actually not anything dramatic, but it's the words that you use really matter. And so I think this understanding of what is going to resonate in each region is really important. And I think that AI is not there yet. And I don't know how much it will really be there where we can totally trust it from a cultural perspective because as we know, like it depends on the data put into it. And we see that those biases in all of like, historical context in tech, right? Where usually it's white men that are putting information in. And so the information that comes out is catered to white men, right? So yeah, that's where I think that the human element is really important.
Yeah, what you said is interesting. It's true. Like all the biases that we feed into the model, that's what's gonna output, and that's where human oversight would come in. So, for example, you're gonna say a humorous advertisement. Perhaps in the Western context, it's funny, but it's if you go to a different country, they might even take offense to the messaging. So, what you're saying is important that cultural nuance and that's not something AI can learn. It's something we just grew up in. I don't know when AI was funny. I tried it with ChatGPT. I don't know if you tried it as well, but the jokes didn't just land with me. So
Yeah.
my question now is since General Assembly is in the business of learning or teaching others, I just want to ask when was the last time you learned something new and what was it about?
I mean, I'm learning right now with AI. Definitely stuff that like I'm constantly learning right now. I'm trying to upskill myself. But I also like we have courses, so I'm working to take those workshops. I've taken multiple courses with GA actually. I took some in UX design and in project management because I think there's a lot of different ways that you can help upskill your career, even if it's not specifically just in marketing. And about 6 months ago, I took on this role of country head for Singapore as an operational role. And operations is not my background. So again, just trying to like understand my, brush up my like college finance, like what is a P&L and how does this work? So these are all things that I have to constantly be upskilling myself for. And honestly, like I love it. That's the and I think it's nice at working at General Assembly because we do have this like lifelong learning and like constant growth mindset. It's really embedded into our DNA, and so everyone is really supportive as well. If I need to like hop on a call with someone to be like, hey, can you just explain this to me? Because I'm still new in this role and I don't get it. So I think it's really good. And I think it's important to note that like, of course, from a GA like sales perspective, yes, you should take a class, you should learn. It's really good. But there's so many other ways to upskill yourself and constantly be learning, right? So sometimes that idea of like, oh, sitting there for 40 hours and having homework is a little daunting, but it shouldn't stop you from upskilling yourself, right? You can be having coffee chats and conversations and you can be doing so much else, so many other things. You can be watching YouTube videos. You can be on LinkedIn Learning. Like there's so many different ways. And I do feel like those are all steps, right? And as soon as you get enough, as much as you can out of like the content library upskilling, then you move to like a course. And then as much as you can do in a course, then you move on to like hands-on learning. So there's so much, and I'm really grateful to work at GA where we encourage all types of
I guess your employees are lucky to have you as a boss. Like, I
upskilling.
think that's like a dream boss where you just have this growth mindset. Because in some industries, it's more cutthroat, or if you don't know something, they'll just, I don't know, kick you out. But anyway, my question now is what's something you've learned about yourself as a leader with the process of guiding teams through the uncertain tech transitions like AI?
Um, Something I've learned about myself. I think there's lots of different styles of leadership, and I think that's something that I had to learn as kind of like a hard truth that I think we as a society kind of I don't want to say idolize, but maybe like dramatize this one specific style of leader. And I've even had great leaders that are like that style. And so it was hard for me to swallow that that's not the kind of leader that I am. I am like unfiltered to a fault. I'm very transparent. My team knows what's going on. If I'm nervous, like and they know, right? But I think that the idea of a leader is not to be like this solid, for me at least, this solid kind of like grounding force. And I think that's great. There are leaders that are like that are the rock, that are like always inspirational, and they really like help ground the team. For me, I think it's more of like, hey, like I don't know what's gonna happen. Let's figure it out together. And again, like kind of that growth mindset. Like I'm not sure, I'm definitely not the expert, but this is what I think. Like, what do you guys think? Let's figure it out. This idea, what we do know is like it's okay to fail, and I think that's now like a common leadership thing. So I think for me, just understanding that like there's different leadership styles and different things that work. There was a long time where I had great leaders and I wanted to be them. So I would like put their name in my head. I would say like, what would they say? What would they do? And it just ends up being a little inauthentic, and that gives me stress. And that gives me anxiety because I'm not really my true self. And so right now, like I am chaotic. I am like, I'm transparent if I'm nervous about something or I'm like, oh, this is not like I didn't expect this. Like I'm very like you can read it on my face. But I think my team knows that and they feel it's more of like a team collaboration. And so that's what works for us.
I guess what you said was really resonant to me, especially as a young person. When I really admire someone, I want to copy their leadership style, thinking that's the one way to do it. Because, hey, if they inspired me, might as well inspire others through their style. But what you said that it actually stresses us out. And the reason why you're able to know this is you reflected on it. You took the time. And my question now is with AI, people are saying, hey, you need to study this, all these courses, you need to learn this coding stuff going on. A lot of people in a fast paced world, they don't really give themselves time to reflect. And that's why they weren't able to learn. So my question is two two things. First, as a personal basis, how do you give yourself time to reflect? How does that process work for you? And also in General Assembly, how do you teach learners to reflect on what they've learned and not just to to reapply what they've learned and not just to feel themselves good that hey, I took a certificate from General Assembly, therefore I'm good, even though they won't apply it in their lives.
Absolutely. So, first question around time to reflect. It's really hard. Like I'm not, again, just transparent. I don't have a PR answer. It's really hard. I'm a mom of two kids. I work global hours, which means I'm online all the time. I also, want to travel and want to see my family, which is far away. So there's just a lot of constant things that need my attention. So finding time to reflect is really difficult. I always I tried like, oh, I'm going to journal every morning or I'm going to like end the night with these things. And I actually found that in between meetings was my best time. Sometimes, like, not sometimes, usually every day, there's at least like 15, 20 minutes in between the next meeting. And I will used to like go and try to get a couple emails done and stuff like that. And now I say, like, I'm not going to get anything done in those times. So let me just take a second to like check in with my body, check in with the things that I want to check in with. Like if, and in those cases, like if I want to play and tinker around with AI, like let me just leave that as like dead time, that it's okay. Instead of like trying to squeeze time out of every moment. That being said, your second question around General Assembly and like how we teach that. So this is a really big value of ours. This is a really important aspect in the way that we teach is the action and the doing. So we're actually a project based, not assessment based. Which means that it's not just like, check, I took the test, here's my certificate, I'm done. But it is actually building on your project throughout your entire cohort so that you can make sure that you are doing the actual things that you would need to be doing in your job and utilizing those skill sets. And then not just the technical skills, but presenting that project and being able to showcase how your data or your tech is being used. So these are all different types of skill sets that we highly encourage. And so that's embedded in the curriculum, is that time to like quote unquote reflect, which is really just to like be hands-on and to do it. Yeah.
My question is, yes, we need both technical and soft skills like communication, the ability to persuade people with their ideas and get their message across. My question is, in your own experience learning and teaching a class or leading a project, what are the skill set that you believe that still a gap in learners? That you believe that even with AI, even though they have AI to help them upskill in a specific domain, they still lack on that.
Yeah, so I think the human aspect is just never going to go away. So the soft skills become even more important in like an AI world, right? Being able to have that connection, and again, like I mentioned before, marketing is not just advertising; it's connection. But that's every industry or every kind of field. It's not just being a software engineer and sitting down and coding. You have to understand how the code is going to be used, where the codes could have issues, and then like be able to sell that from an internal to your internal team and internal stakeholders, that like, hey, this is why I think we should do XYZ and this is how the code should be. So communication is like the most important thing. And I think that empathy and that understanding that human aspect is really key. We're going to be in a feel like time. We're in a time where we have the software engineers who speak code, and we have the data who speak, something else. So everyone is kind of like their different language. So communication and being able to showcase that, like for me as marketing to be able to talk to tech people, this is really important. But vice versa is also very important, right? You have to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down. That's not the right thing, but you have to be able to speak to the layman terms and be able to present the leadership of why this technical stuff is important. So communication is probably the number one thing that I think is the soft skill that's needed, but there's tons more, and it's really all around like human and connection that I think AI will not, that I know AI will never take over. I guess.
What you said was important, where in the world of AI, we're actually becoming more integrated with each other. Because before, we worked in silos. Like all the
Mhm.
lawyers are just in one corner, and accountants and marketing at one side. But with AI, you're saying that teams nowadays and the companies you're working on, they actually work together. So just like what you said, even though you're marketing, you need to understand finance. That's why you're learning P&L so that you're able to communicate with people in the finance.
Right.
This was a skill set before, but you're saying with AI is becoming more important to not to dumb things down, but to effectively communicate to the other person understands. So perhaps it means not giving out too much jargons. So I'm just curious because from my experience and from other people's anecdotes, engineers are not that great at communicating. Um, they often write badly. Like they're not that good at written communication, or they're very used to using technical jargons that sometimes sound alien. So I'm just curious on, have you worked on a project where you actually help engineers or people that are very technical to communicate with people like us that are more used to layman terms?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's embedded in our curriculum at GA because it is so important. So students are, again, they work on a project, but they have to present that project and showcase in, again, like layman's terms, why this project is important, why they did it, and what was it that they did from a technical aspect without going too deep into the technical. So these sorts of like present, and we have workshops called like storytelling with data and things like that, right? This is really important. And I wouldn't say it's like more important now versus before. It's always been important. But to your point, like we had to be in kind of quote unquote silos. And I think the other part that's interesting to this is that now with AI, everyone thinks they're going to be able to do other people's jobs, right? So all of a sudden, I know what you do as a software engineer. AI told me that like this is, and that's not actually true, right? And so where we start getting snippets of things, I think it's going to be more important for the communication because now a technical person has to explain to me why that is wrong or right. Right, what AI told me, or a lawyer has to explain to me like, hey, yes, AI said this, but actually, like you didn't think about these, few things.
So it's more of a trust but verify thing. And the thing with AI, it just gives you the average, but it doesn't necessarily is specific to your situation. Like for example, if I ask you, hey, what's your favorite color? The world would say on average people's favorite color is blue. But it doesn't mean that your favorite color is blue.
Right.
But since I'm there, what is your favorite color?
It was blue, actually.
It is average. But
I'm basic like that, I guess.
I also like blue, but the point is it's the average, but what does it mean for a specific situation and that's your role, right? I can just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I have a marketing campaign. This is what I want. Well, what you're saying is, hey, AI just takes the average, but it's people's experiences that they know exactly what's the most important data to look at. And hey, this might be blind spots that you might not have considered. And that's where human connection, that's what your point is. My question now is, there's a lot of hyper personalization in marketing. And sometimes people might think it's creepy, like, hey, why do you know that about? Like I forgot what company was that in the US where they track people's purchasing habits to the point where they can project whether or not you're pregnant because they believe that once you're pregnant, you're gonna buy a lot of stuff. So you're a very valuable customer. And there was one case where the woman didn't tell her mom that she was pregnant. She herself didn't even know she was pregnant. But this company knew because of her purchasing habits. So my question now is, since you're in marketing, of course we wanted people to feel that this advertisement is really for them, that it's personalized for them. But where do we do the balance where
Mm.
it doesn't seem too creepy?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard. It's always going to have to be a line that's drawn. I think I don't I guess I don't know to be honest because that's just the way it's going. And I think any company that doesn't like obviously they shouldn't be like saying that you're pregnant before they you know you're pregnant, but any company that is not targeting their audience correctly and using the data that they have is going to be left behind. So this is the future of marketing. It is hyper like personalized, and I think like 10 years ago, it was a little creepy, but now we all know, like, I think about a new rug and then Instagram shows me ads, right? So, like, I think we kind of almost expect it. I'm like, new rug, I need a new rug, like, so that it can start giving me ads because I don't even want to search. I just want it to tell me, like, I just want it to come up to me. So I do think, of course, there's ethics behind this, there's morals behind this, and this is where human nature comes in outside of AI, right? Like when we talk about what's not going to be taken over, like this is the human element that is so important. Where do we draw the line? What is correct and not okay? But this idea of like things being personalized to you is this is the future. This is not even the future; it's the present, right? So I think it's going to take a little bit of society shift as well to get that balance, and you have to hope that the marketers that are behind it are doing it in an ethical way, and are didn't just learn AI randomly, but are are actually taking the courses and know what to look out for and those sorts of things, right?
And you're one of those marketers that are learning. So we already know the General Assembly is one of the ethical ones out there.
I hope so. That's right. Yeah.
So now, the important thing is, yes, AI can give us the data, but it's still humans that decide what to do, right? So my question would be, what was the hardest call you made for a marketing project that you've done?
The hardest call.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's the hardest call that I've made, but there's plenty of times where like um data will say one thing and like I know different. And so I have to be like, that's wrong. And that's something like again that human aspect of things that I think is really important. Data is great, and we like it's one of our core values at GA. Like bring data to the table. It's really important. We don't make decisions without it. But that being said, it's only gonna like measure what you give it. It's not going to give you what matters, right? And you as a marketer or whoever has to know and like be able to test and like trust your gut on that. There's times where we'll run a campaign and the data says that like we had so many leads and it was a huge success. And I know because I'm listening to the calls and I'm seeing the number, like I'm like, that something's wrong. That's not right. And then turns out we did get a lot of leads, but they were in just like a completely different region that we don't offer anything. So that's not success, right? I mean, it can be on paper, it is, but it's not. So this idea of having to dig further in is really important. And oftentimes, like we see that here in Singapore because we'll get leads, like for example, from Malaysia, but that's not we have a different like group there in Malaysia that would have to service those leads. But sometimes in the for other regions you have to like kind of explain that like hey, Singapore is its own country and is like we are like government subsidized, so we are only serving for Singaporeans and PRs. Like so again, that's sometimes hard to target in a digital marketing campaign that like just this little red dot, if you will. So there's times like that where I've had to basically say not that the data is lying, it's not lying, but we need to have a better story and understand, we need to dig further.
This is actually interesting. I never thought of that because most countries they're more locked, like they're landlocked. It's like especially in Asia, like Japan is its own little island, Philippines is its own little island, Indonesia as well. So what's interesting with Singapore is they're just border from Malaysia. A lot of Malaysians they just cross the border every day to work in Singapore. So I can imagine that yes, once you target Singapore, you won't really know who's Singaporean. You well, majority will be Singaporean. There'll be foreign workers or people who are not part of the government subsidies, right? So that's just externalities. So my question now would be, it's take a back step from AI and all these things. But let's say if someone were to look back on your work and you would say, hey, Miss Sima is ahead of her time, what do you think people would be talking about when they said that?
Um, then like, what's the thing I'm most proud of?
Yeah.
I guess.
Like if
Okay.
people were to talk about you.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I think there's a couple, which I think is a good thing. I mean, at GA, I'm lucky to have worked on some like really cool campaigns. Uh, there's so for a few years during like the COVID years when like webinars were the height of stuff, we ran this campaign called How She Got There, How We Got There, actually, How We Got There. And it was a women's focused event, a series that we did. So it was like a series of panels that we did in March across a Women's Day, International Women's Day. And we had women all over the Asia Pacific, so Singapore, Australia, all over Southeast Asia, that would come in and come on online and talk about how they got there. So they would share their stories, and it was in all the different departments, in different industries, and it was really inspirational. And to be honest, like selfishly, I loved it because I got to get inspired by them talking about their resilience and their story and their ambition. So it was a really great campaign for me because I got to like pick and choose these awesome women to like showcase. And I was really inspired by how many of them were volunteering their time to come and like be inspirational for everybody else. And so I thought that was great because like what do they say, like you can't be what you can't see, sort of thing. And so of course we had women in tech, which is really important to showcase, but we had women in all different fields as well, and talking about like their story and how they got there. So I loved that campaign. There's another one that I just for the sake of saying too, that we did last year, which was around the Olympics time, and that one I'm really proud of because, as we've talked about, it's really hard to do a global campaign at a local level, right? And so this one was Olympics, which is something that like resonates globally. Everyone kind of knows that. It was during the summer, and then what we did was in every region we highlighted some of our own alumni, and then brought in testimonials and things. So it was very localized, but a global campaign. So we had like all of our alumni from all around the world that were like showcased in this. And then we also took photos, and we did like video shoot, photo shoot, all that stuff so that we could utilize them in our marketing campaign. So before we started, you were talking about seeing our ads on the MRT. Like those are our actual alumni, which is awesome, right? Those are the real people that took GA. And so it makes me really proud because we're not out here. I mean, no shade to it. Like, I think that sometimes it's necessary, but like in this case, it wasn't models. It wasn't like scripted. It wasn't, this sorts of things. It was the story really telling itself. And that human aspect and that connection, that they were able to do, you can only get it because you're like, oh, that person is like me and they changed their career, so maybe I should do it too. So super, super proud of that campaign. It actually won one of the marketing awards for it. So that was like a big brainchild of our HQ, and I loved being able to support putting that out in the different regions, and bringing it all together.
I didn't know that was the best advertisement. I just saw it in I just saw it in an MRT when I was going to school every day. And what I liked about the ad, it was very human centric. And I didn't feel as if it was fearful because most of this AI ads is, hey, if you're not into this, you're going to be left behind or someone out there is going to take your job. But these testimonials were inspiring because some of these people actually shifted their careers.
Yeah.
That is one of the scariest part in shifting careers is hard and it's scary and it's unknown. And the fact that General Assembly not only taught them but helped them become successful is really inspiring. So General Assembly is in this marketing of inspiring people, and you also did implement like a women's panelist to inspire women in tech. So to end this discussion, my question is, when was the last time you inspired others? Or perhaps to say someone told you or an email like, hey, Sima, you totally inspired me. Can you tell us like a story about that? Because I want to know more about you as a person. Because you did amazing, inspiring ads. So the fact that you can do this in a company basis, then perhaps in a personal way, it's more, it's there.
Sure. It's so awkward to be like, oh, someone said it's great. Maybe that's the woman in me that's uncomfortable with that. But yeah, I think again, like kind of we talked about being a human leader and always with growth. One of my team members recently had a child, recently gave birth and came back from maternity leave. So I think there I've been, and it shouldn't be the case. She shouldn't be praising me. It should just be normal. But she definitely had, told me a lot, like how happy she is to work for me and stuff like that, because I think this idea of understanding, again, like for me, I know what it's like to go from maternity, like go on maternity leave, how chaotic that is, that it's not a break, and someone says, how's your holiday? Like, this is not a holiday, it was hell. And then to come back to work and feel like, am I valued? Am I important? Like, if they could survive 6 months without me, do they really need me? Like, do I have to go above and beyond? But then still feel bad and I'm not there. There's a lot of feelings there. And so because I had gone through it, I had been able to support her in these kind of like mental gymnastics that you do, these emotions that you go through. So often like she would say something and I could know that like, oh, she's feeling guilty like by saying this, or like she had gotten sick, and so it was like right when she came back and she was like, oh, like it was clear she was frustrated. I was like, no, you can get sick at any time. Just because you came back from maternity leave doesn't mean you owe us like X amount of extra work because you like, so I think those sorts of things, she was telling me like how grateful she was. I think that comes back to that like you can't be what you can't see sort of thing, right? And the importance of having more women in power. Not that necessarily they need to have had children or whatever, but there's this aspect of understanding what others are going through. If you've gone through it, and it's just not going to be the same for a man. And so then as a woman that works under a man, sometimes you're going to be extra nervous or working, not sure. Versus like in this case, I could really be able to be like, hey, no need to feel guilty. You can get sick at any time. It's not a big deal. We've got it covered. Get ready, feel better, and then we'll go. And like, I think that sort of stuff gives a connection between the two of us that now she appreciates me and wants to work with me. And I think that understanding that like, okay, well, Sima has kids and is able to do this job, and so I want to be able to do my job. Like it, I think that there's a level of being able to see it, and it's important to mirror it. That being said, I also think that the vice versa is important as well, and I try my best to do that. Again, like I said, I'm unfiltered to a T, but like I will be like, hey, I am burnt out. Like, I'm just going to take the morning. Like, I just need the morning to not be on the computer. And I say that to my team so that they know that, like, if they need to do something like that, that is okay. And so, like, you have to lead by example, right? I'm very open that, like, hey, I have to go see my therapist. Like, I'm going to go see my therapist. I'm off from this 1 hour. Can't talk to me. I'm going to be in my therapy session. Like, I feel like I need to be open about that so that everyone else can feel comfortable as well, knowing that like their mental health is important, and they are, yes, we're all working on really amazing things and it's very stressful and there's lots of work and all that sort of stuff. It's important, but at the end of the day, like you're not just a number at this company, like you are a person. I want to be treated like a person, so I treat others like a person.